All right, since the president took office in 2016, and even before that, he had a bit of a rocky relationship with the press. They definitely went after him quite a bit. He's even said it himself that he doesn't feel like he's been treated fairly by the media. And now, since the other outlets have called this election, we're seeing a stark difference between the treatment of the president and Joe Biden. We've got a bunch of examples of the bias to show you. But first, let's bring in our company, Democratic strategist Jessica Deloach, and partner at Ballard Partners and former spokesman and policy advisor to Governor Jeb Bush of Florida, Justin Sayfie. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks.
Great to be.
Good to see you guys. Justin, I know we were talking during the break. It's got to be nice being someone in Florida that's not worried about hanging chads and counting ballots. So let's turn our attention to the media coverage, if we will. I want to show you guys a little mashup of some of the media reaction when President Trump was elected in 2016. Let's take a listen.
Donald Trump wins tonight, no matter who they voted for. Take a look at these numbers here. 21% say they'll be concerned.
This was a white lash against a changing country. It was a white lash against a black president.
I think it's absolutely catastrophic, that it's catastrophic for the United States, that it's catastrophic for our position in the world. It emboldens our enemies and adversaries. It makes our allies terrified that we're not going to be their allies anymore.
Well, the tone was a little different. Media reaction to Biden. Take a listen to this.
Well, it's easier to be a parent this morning. It's easier to be a dad. It's easier to tell your kids character matters. It matters. Tell them the truth matters.
I don't know if you've had a chance to look at your TV this afternoon, but I described it as a nationwide block party. You can really see the exuberance and the bliss of people in the streets.
Where do you think this election will rank?
Oh, this election is exciting because it's a revival of our polity. Just the turnout alone is exciting. And you can say a revival of our democracy.
Justin, I'll start with you. I think the difference is that, when you look at the vote, both in 2016 and now, clearly there's a lot of people who voted for Hillary Clinton last time, and there are a lot that voted for Donald Trump. Equally passionate, I would actually argue in 2016, very passionate for Trump. I think the same thing is pretty much the case now. It seems like, though, when a Republican wins, when Trump wins, it's all doom and gloom. When the media look at the Biden race and the number of votes that he got, this is amazing.
This is nothing new. I remember when George H.W. Bush beat Michael Dukakis, they blamed it on his racist campaign. The same thing with George W. Bush. When Republicans win the White House, there's something wrong with America. There's something wrong with our democracy. There's something wrong with the Electoral College. When a Democrat wins, one of the people you just showed says it's a day of bliss.
Jess, you live in the Washington, D.C. area. I went back and forth between here and New York for our Election Day coverage. It was interesting. I saw all of the city get boarded up because of potential riots. It was interesting. The riots and the protesting and the looting wasn't because Joe Biden could win. It was if Donald Trump wins, that's going to happen. It's interesting to see the reaction, how it's different. The right, all of these 70 million people that have been out supporting Donald Trump haven't taken to the streets and caused damage and looting and vandalism. It's a very different reaction than I think people were anticipating from a Trump victory.
Well, if anything, I think it is important that we recognize how close the vote was. And what that shows you is how polarized this country is, and that no matter what, Joe Biden has to be the president of everyone in this country. And, you brought up things being boarded up. It's really sad to see that as a reality because people are so scared that they don't know how folks will react once an outcome is determined.
But don't you think? I mean, I'm not trying to put you on the spot as but the thing that to me is that, these guys, this isn't Trump supporters coming out and rioting and looting. Everyone who's on the team Trump is basically saying, let's use the legal remedies that we have to contest something. But you're not seeing the violence and the destruction that the left was talking about doing, which I think does speak to the difference in the two sides as well.
Yeah, well, how about this? I talked to some shop owners here in D.C. about the ones who were boarding up their windows on M Street in Georgetown, just asking them what their perspective was. And what they would say is, we don't know what's coming. And corporate is telling us to do this because we just have to be careful. You talk to people in Texas where you've had people riding around in trucks with their big Trump flags and guns and, whatnot. That's a scary situation, too. I don't believe anybody was willing to trust anyone. But I want our country to get past that because it's a toxic place to be in. And it's really sad that it even came to this. We should have never allowed our politics to become so divided that people couldn't feel safe just operating in their own day. And people on the right and the left were guilty of engaging in activities that made people uncomfortable. It isn't one side more than the other. It is people on both sides of the aisle.
I want to talk about conceding the election. Obviously, Trump has not conceded yet, which is his right to do so. But the media has been kind of making fun of him. Take a listen.
I mean, as an American citizen, it's really disappointing. It's you're not you, but your party's leaders are acting like babies.
It just feels laughable. It just feels small and pitiful and irrelevant. And I mean, he's at his golf course. Of course he is.
Okay, respectfully, I don't recall in 2000 anyone making fun of Al Gore when he was doing the same and calling for an accurate count of all legal ballots. I mean, this is where I think it's like, why doesn't the media just allow President Trump to do what he respectfully should have the right to do? Justin?
Yep, right. Well, no, and I agree, and the reason for that is they believe, those news organizations that call the election, they believe that they get to decide when the election's over. No single state yet has even certified the results of their election. And there are lawsuits that the Trump campaign is pursuing, and that's perfectly appropriate. That's how it works in the United States of America under the rule of law. And they just want him to bow down to them and what they have said. And that's what this is all about.
Jessica, I don't want to jam you here, but from my perspective, I'm Joe Biden. I want the American people, he says he's going to be the president for all, to know that this was an accurate election. And I feel like he should feel like, to validate his win, that he would want every accurate and lawful ballot to be cast.
Sure. Look, I don't think that Joe Biden would have a problem with anybody taking time to count the votes that were cast. I really don't. I don't think the problem comes from Joe Biden. Now, if anything, I mean, lessons learned the hard way from Florida, right? We see how painful this process can be when people just want some resolution, which is really where we are right now. You know, when it comes to the media and their portrayal of what this outcome is, you can find footage from the left, you can find footage from the right, and there are people in the in-between that are not grandstanding or treating this analysis like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. But that's the bulk of what we see because we choose where we get our news. We're not always seeking out the more neutral stuff. You know, look, if the Republican Party wants every vote to be counted, they have the right for every vote to be counted. I fully support that because what I don't want is 4 years where people are able to say that this election wasn't valid. The world is watching us, and we need to set an example of what free and fair elections look like.
Okay, well, there we go. It's got some bipartisan agreement then, because I think you're right. The more that people have transparency, can actually watch these votes be counted, know that it was true, that's super helpful to the process. So thank you both for weighing in. We will see you both soon.